Hi and welcome. This is Marla with Mad About Cards and Crafts, and I'm so excited to be bringing you my first CottageCutz design team project. This mini slimline card is what we're creating today. Let's jump into the project. I do have the hello with shadow die. It's a one-piece die set. It cuts out the word hello and the shadow piece. We also have the Country Farm cows. With CottageCutz, you don't have to snip apart any of the dies. It comes in a solid piece, and then you can put your cardstock in the areas that you want to cut. So if I wanted to cut that fence, I would just cut a small piece of paper, put it over where that fence was, and cut it out. So it's really easy peasy. I choose to Copic color. I love to Copic color my images. So all I did was take some white Copic marker friendly paper, and I ran it through my die cut machine and chose the pieces that I wanted to use. Here is the farm tractor with trailer. I'll be using the trailer without the wheel, and I'll be using the hen. So for that, I still cut out the whole piece because I added all the extra pieces that I didn't use. I just tucked them back into the envelope that I keep my dies in. Let's jump into the project. As you can see, I have 3 cows. I do only end up using 2 of them. I'm going to start with my darkest marker, which is going to be an E27. I'll add my shadows on the inside of the legs, around the back side, and where the chest is. I'm going to blend that out with my mid-tone, which is going to be an E25. I leave lots of white space, and that's when I blend everything out together with an E23. I do like to go around my white images with my Copic marker, so I'll just take any of the colors, it doesn't matter which one, and I will run it all along the edges, and that just prevents any of that white from the cardstock from showing. I will add a little bit of coloring to the tail, so I used my darkest marker and my mid-tone. I used the darkest marker towards the cow's bottom, and then I blended it out with my mid-tone, which was that E25. Here I am going around the edges of that cow. I'm going to color the top of the face the exact same way and part of the ears, so here I'm adding that shadowing again. I'm going to blend it out with my mid-tone. As I mentioned, you could use colored cardstock for this and not do any coloring at all, and it would be just as adorable. I just like to add multiple tones to this. So for the inside of the ears, I'm going to add a R marker, which is going to give it kind of like a pink tone. And I do want to apologize for being off screen. I didn't realize that I had pulled my images down that far. For the muzzle of the cow, you have a couple of options. I could have, there's a separate muzzle which would add a little bit more dimension to the cow that I could have colored separately. Instead, I just went ahead and colored the muzzle that was on the full face. I used, again, some E50 markers. There's that R1 that I used for the ear. You could see that I did get some of that brown further down on the right ear. And so all I did was take my colorless blender and I blended that out and then re-added that R1 marker, and that smoothed everything the way that I like it. For the hooves of the cow, I am using some neutral colors. They are up on the screen. And once I finish with this, we will move on. So I want to thank you so much for joining me today. As I said, I was so excited to be a part of this design team. We have some wonderful designers. Most of them do post on the CottageCutz blog. So if you haven't subscribed to the blog, I will have that linked in the description box below, so you can head over and do that as well. Here I have the fence that comes with this die set. Let me tell you, the detail on this fence is fantastic. Oh my goodness. The embossing that this die does gives so much texture, which you'll be able to see with my coloring. So So I've used my darkest marker, which I think may have been a W6. I'm blending a little bit further with a W4, and I believe I finish off with a W2. But look at how fantastic that texture is. It just picks the Copic marker up beautifully. You don't lose any of that with the coloring, and I was thrilled with this. I think that CottageCutz has been around for a long time, but I really think that their products are quality products. The dyes are not flimsy. They are very well made. So if you've never tried CottageCutz, I would highly recommend that you try their dyes. In order to get the eyes back in, because obviously I did do the Copic coloring, I wanted to add my micron pen, and so there are little indentations, easy to see where the eyes are, and I use that micron pen to do that. Here I colored up the spots on the cow. There were dyes for that. This is going to add more texture and dimension to my mini slimline card. I love that you can layer pieces. As I mentioned, there was a piece for the muzzle that I could have done as well. So you are able to really bring these animals and these scenes to life with all of the layering pieces that are available to you. I'm going to glue that head on. I do end up coloring that second cow off screen. I make it kind of a creamy off-white color with some black spots, and I think it's adorable. There are some little pieces that are like little tufts of hair that will be hanging down from the forehead, and that's what I'm coloring right there. I know it's really hard to see, but once I start putting it on, you'll see how perfect it is. And then I'm going to add the horns. So I'm going to make this a male cow and add the horns. I'll use the same E markers. So I use the same markers that I used for the muzzle and the spots on the hair. And then I'm going to use the same markers on the horns. I'll attach those horns using some glue. I choose to use wet glue. I think it gives me a little bit more wiggle room to move things around if I don't like the placement that I have. So I would strongly recommend using some wet glue with this. Here I'm just trying to figure out which side is up. And once I get that figured out, I'm going to go ahead and add that little bit of glue to the front of it, because I am going to glue it to the back side of the head. So you want to make sure that you have the glue on the right side of that horn. One of the things that I do appreciate about art glitter glue is that it dries clear and you don't get a glossy finish. So if you over glue just a little bit, it's not going to ruin your project. Here I have a piece of cardstock that is 3 by 6, and I'm going to do some stenciling with some fossilized amber and a floral stencil from my stash. One of the things that I love to do is I love to add texture, and stenciling allows me to do that. So instead of going with a regular white sky with clouds, I chose to add this floral stencil, and that is going to add even more interest to my card. To finish off and ground my cows and the fence, I do have, I believe it's Vintage Photo Distress ink, and both of these are distress inks and not oxides, and I'm going to just add a little bit of grounding to the bottom. For the trough and the hay, I am sorry, that first color, I'm not sure what it is. It's obviously a yellow, but you'll see in just a moment, this is, I believe, a YR24. Now I'm going to do some flicking motions. So I'm flicking my Copic marker, and I'm adding more texture to that hay. And then I will color the trailer, which is going to be my trough, with some G90 markers. I believe I use G91, 93, and 96 to color that. Now again, as with the cow and some of the other pieces, this does have a layering lip, so the lip of this little trough or this trailer is going to have that little bit of dimension, which you are going to find out over time that I absolutely love dimension. I'm going to add that hay, and again I added the glue to the front of the hay because I am going to glue it to the back of that trough, and our card is coming together nicely. Here is that hello with shadow. I'm using the same greens, you can see it on the screen, that I used for the trough. Now I do want to mention that I ended up adding glossy accents to the word hello. I thought I wanted to do that and I didn't like it. It was awful, and you'll get to see it here in just a minute. I set it aside to dry and I come back to it and I don't like it at all. So what I do off camera is I do the same exact thing. So I cut out another shadow, I cut out another word hello, I color them both the same way. So you're going to see I'm going to bring in a brown marker right here in E25 and I'm going to color that word hello. And then I'm going to glue it to the shadow. So I did the exact same thing and I just glued it right on top, and I'll show you this at the end. I just glued it right back on top and easy peasy I covered up what I didn't like. So a lot of times we'll be making cards and there are things that we do and we think, ooh, I really shouldn't have done that. I don't like that. You know, it's no big deal. Just, you know, cover it up. There's a way that we can camouflage almost everything. And so I just did it with another one of the cuts, and hey, it just added a little bit more dimension, right? So I'm going around the edges of this word hello, and then we will glue it on, and then I'll start, I believe, assembling my card. I do color the milk bottle in a red, and so you're going to find that I try to incorporate all of the colors in multiples. So when I come in with the red, I am going to also color up some of the flowers that were for the pail and for the cow's head in the Country Farm cows, and I'm going to use them as accents. I do end up gluing them on off camera and coloring them, but I did add them just to get a little bit more of that red into this card. One of my favorite things to do is splatter. I wanted to add some texture to the ground, so I did cover up the top of the card and brought in my Tombow Starry watercolors, and I did a little bit of splattering. But one of my other favorite things to do is to add that gold around the edge, and I think it just gives the panel a little bit more interest, a little bit more oomph, and I really like the way that it looks, especially with the colors on this cardstock. So that fossilized amber over the amber cardstock, and then the vintage photo. Look at all of that sparkle. It's absolutely beautiful. My card base is going to be 6 1/4 by 3 1/4. So this is a mini slimline card. There are no set ways to make a mini slimline. They're approximately, I think the largest is usually 6 1/4 by 3 1/4, but you can do 3 by 6 1/4. You can do 3 by 6. There are a lot of different ways you can do this. So I do have craft cardstock. I've added some glue to the back of my blended panel, and I centered that so I have a 1/4 inch border. Now we're going to start putting our pieces together and building this absolutely adorable scene. I am adding my fence, and then I'm going to lift it up just a little bit so that I can slip this cow underneath, and I leave his head poking out over the top. Once I add that, I'm going to bring in my second cow, and you can see how I colored that one up. I did do it a little bit differently, as I said. And then we're going to add our hay trough. Once I add that hay trough, I'm going to come in with my sentiment. Oh, nope, I am going to add my chicken. So I wanted to add my chicken to the fence post. And there we have the trifecta, 3 different animals. And here we are with the word hello. Now that's looking a little bit plain to me. As I said off camera, I did color up the flowers and some of the leaves. I'm going to add this pop of red, which I think is just going to start setting things off. It's going to go with the top of the rooster's head. So now we've added a little bit more red to this card. And then I needed to color that the chicken's beak in just a little bit more. I felt that it was getting lost there. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, this isn't my favorite. I need to add some more. So there you can see that I've added that glossy accents to the word hello. I've added the 3 flowers and some of the foliage, and now I have a sentiment that says friend from my stash, and I'm using, I believe I used the Vintage Photo Distress Oxide, and I used a piece of acetate because I want to make sure that my sentiment is straight. I only have one shot at this, and I want to make sure that it's where I want it. So it wasn't where I wanted it. It wasn't straight, and so I just wiped off the ink. I went ahead and I straightened it out. I'm going to try it one more time. Much better. Okay, I like that. And so now I'm going to ink this up 3 times. I do want to mention that if you do use Distress Oxide ink to stamp, that it does dry back quite a bit. So that's why I'm stamping it 3 times. I want to make sure that I have that depth when it dries back. Here's a look at my card. I'm showing you that I changed out that hello, got rid of that glossy accents. I'm added a little bit of dimension. It added a little bit of dimension, and you can see all of that glittery goodness from the gold watercolors. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you liked this video. Here's a look at my finished card. Please make sure that you subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and until next time, have a fabulous day.